Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Suhas Bhat. I am the head of product management for a few low-code and no-code products in HCL software, including VoltMX. And we'll take this session to walk through the features of VoltMX and give you a good high-level overview of the product as is. So we have a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to be a bit fast. The call is recorded, so we'll always be able to go back and um, review it for more information. Okay, so some aspects of roadmap and such, if we cover, we're just trying to call out that it is under our discretion to change it. It is just our current intentions that we are talking about. Okay, most of what I'm talking about is what is already there. So VoltMX, what is VoltMX, right? VoltMX is, so even before going to VoltMX, we want to present the scenario of application development. You have professional developers who are building applications high-end B2C or facing end customers or high-end complexity and stuff like that. And you have citizen developers building applications for their internal use and B2E kind of a thing. And there is also the assisted development where both the business users and IT are collaborating and building application. VoltMX's unique proposition is basically that it is a low-code application development platform that empowers both professional and citizen developers to build engaging experiences across all digital touchpoints. And we'll look through this as we go through this call today. And we serve pretty much every industry. There is government, energy, retail, manufacturing, telecommunication, healthcare, consumer goods, and so on, right? So he said it is one platform that caters to both citizen and professional. So how do we do it? So the platform itself has two IDEs. One is called as Leap, which is for citizen developers. It is a browser-based IDE. It helps them ramp on easily and build simple web-based applications. The other is called as Iris, which is a rich client IDE that you download to your system and build applications with. And it can build to any endpoint, that is like wearables like your smartwatches, mobiles, tablets, desktops, kiosks, anything, right? And both are part of one single platform, right? I'll come to this later at the end as to why VoltMX and why it is superior. We'll go through them and explain it first. So let us look at some success stories to set the context. So we have hundreds or thousands of applications built by hundreds of customers. Let us take an example of a particular partner in APAC who has built more than 80 applications that are being used by 100 million plus users regularly, right? And they've built applications for 20 plus customers across several industries from finance and pharma to hotel and government. They have a team of developers that they use because they are building and managing for 20 plus customers, and they are building a lot of applications for government as well, including so in scenarios like disaster prevention and tourism and such. And they still have another 40 applications that they are building to continue building more applications with VoltMX. We have a government in the EMEA region who has their entire integrated government services made available to the citizens using app built with VoltMX. And this reaches out to millions of citizens, and anything from paying a fine to getting a building permit or applying for a visa and stuff happens through the app built with VoltMX. It integrates with 160 plus services. It is in several languages, and it has millions of transactions and inquiries on a daily basis. We also have this airline called as Lufthansa, who extensively uses the citizen development capabilities that we spoke about earlier. They converted all their paper-based processes and stuff to digital by using Leap. Anything from procuring or application for leave, or even asking for a spare resource if somebody is going on vacation for a flight and such. They have built actually 12,000 plus apps, and 2,500 apps are in production that are being used by all their employees, 120,000 plus employees. And this has improved their business workflow and processes and reduced IT backlog very, very significantly. And of course, the brand logo that we started off with, the HCL software is a partner of Ferrari, and Ferrari uses VoltaMX for building applications, and they were able to get they had a gifting compliance policy, for example, and they were able to build an app with VoltaMX in a matter of a few weeks and get that so that they can be compliant. So that was to just give you an idea of the kind of apps and such that have been built with VoltaMX. Now let's get into looking more at the product itself. So the VoltaMX platform, as I said earlier, has an IDE for business developers called as Leap, and we have Iris. Iris internally has Flare, which is a patented widget library, which ensures that whatever code is written by the app developer in JavaScript runs natively. So that is a big difference of VoltaMX in that it always generates native code. So if you're building a binary for Android, it is an Android Java binary that is running. If you're building for iOS, it is an Objective-C Swift binary that is running. If you're building for web, it is a HTML binary that is running there. There is not a, it is not like a web app running inside native wrapper. It is a completely native app. And that is where Flare, which is our secret sauce, which is our patented technology, comes into place. Foundry is basically our data integration. We'll go through this in a lot more detail. We also have DevOps, test automation. We have a cloud native SaaS. We support multiple J2E servers. We can connect to pretty much any backend, and we can build an app for pretty much any front end using one single code base. We also have a marketplace which serves as an accelerator for application developers by giving a lot of pre-built components. We'll look at that also briefly. Okay. So Leap. Leap is a no-code software which is running on um, browser, as we said. It has a lot of useful functionality, like you can build an app by just importing an Excel sheet, and it can also create workflows. So basically, if you're trying to create an approval workflow for procurement or stuff like that, where you have to send that to multiple people, it can do all that. And you can customize the look and feel with common web development skills. And Leap also integrates with Foundry for data integration. So pretty much all the data integration and security features out of Foundry is available for Leap. And we'll go through that in a lot more detail when we're looking at the Foundry section of the same. So what Leap gives as a unique proposition is basically it lets you empower the citizen developers to build all the thousands of apps for their daily use cases without sacrificing on security and IT governance. So IT still determines what data is accessed, who can access, and such like that. And only the data that they've exposed through the Foundry services and stuff is accessed by the app developer, the business app developer or citizen developer for building their apps. But once you have restricted the data, they can build whatever apps they want. And when they are publishing it, it again goes to the IT to see that they can review and say, okay, do I allow it? How long do I want to? They can put some policies around compliance and usage and manage it. So this provides a very safe and governed environment for all users, right? Without risking exposure and ensuring you have the highest quality of security and compliance maintained. Iris is a WYSIWYG tool. So basically, it is what you see is what you get. So it gives you real-time preview. So whenever I'm putting something in Iris, it will show exactly how it looks in any device. We'll see that shortly in a demo as well. It supports all the different form factors from desktop to tablet to mobile. It has a visual workflow editor. It is cross-platform, and it integrates with Foundry. And we said it gives you native ability as well. So we build say 95% of the functionality that is there, but the OS is always going to have some quirky function like, oh, for a battery percentage, there is an API. You can still write a code with a single line of code and reach that native function. So that is also something we'll look at. Overall, this significantly reduces the time it takes for developing applications because it is inherently a low code app development platform. Okay, and we will see more of this functionality about the drag and drop and reusable component shortly. Flare, as I said, is the patented engine which translates everything that the app developer does, because the app developer is using the action editor for doing no code, or they are writing code in JavaScript, and ensuring it runs natively on every platform is the job done by Flare. Flare itself is just embedded within Iris. So as far as the app developer is concerned, it's not a separate layer they deal with. It is just a component of Iris that is under the hood when somebody is building an app. Okay. Now let's look at a quick demo of both Iris and another functionality called as App Preview. So this, what you're seeing on screen here is Iris, which is our IDE, right? And you can build applications for forms for different form factors. So this one is looking at mobile, so you can see tablet, responsive web, variables. You can build code modules. It has an MVC architecture inside, so you can build as model view controller. You can have properties specific to every platform or generic ones. So here you can see I can change and see how the device app is going to look in a Google Pixel versus a Samsung Galaxy versus some other device. And I can see how it is going to look in Android versus iOS, in web versus native. I can switch to iOS and see how it is exactly going to look. And this is a real-time preview. You're not even building the application to see exactly how it is going to look on any device. So this is a big feature functionality of VoltMX. It lets you connect to any data that is exposed from Foundry. So all the services that are exposed are visible here. So this is a login service, which takes a user ID and password. Or if you have another service which is sending some data back for a health, for example, which is sending some data on the user record, you can get that. And this now is showing the different settings that are available. Okay, let me just pause here for a minute. So one of the unique features of VoltMX also is called as an enterprise app store. So typically when you're testing applications and you're giving it to end users, you're going to push it to the public app store, like Apple App Store or Google Play Store. But if you're testing it internally, if you want to have your QA test it, or even if you're building an enterprise that is employee specific application, which you do not want to send to the public Play Store, you have an ability called as an enterprise app store, which is exactly like an app store but for the employees. The access is restricted to whoever the admin gives access to, and they can say that these type of applications or these applications are visible for certain users, and all this is available out of the box with VoltMX. And it also supports automatically application upgrades for the apps in the enterprise app store. VoltMX also has a lot of metrics available out of the box because the entire platform is built ground up. So with just clicking a checkbox, you can capture automatic events like, okay, when did somebody go into a form? How long were they in the form? How long did it take for the application to load? Okay, when I was in the application, I got a call, application went to background. How long was it background? When did it come back to foreground? I went a network call. How long did the network call take? What were the different components? How much time did it take in the actual external call versus some data processing that I did? Okay, I had some unhandled exception. Can I get the stack trace of that? Oh, application crashed. Can I get the stack trace of that? What events led to the crash? All of this can be captured out of the box. The app developer can choose what to capture, when to capture. They can just, as easy as clicking a checkbox, start getting this information, and the information can be anonymized so that you know what is happening for a particular user, but not necessarily who that user is. All that flexibility with the available when the data is captured as well. So you can preview the application, and you can debug the app. You can also go to marketplace, which is basically, as I said, sorry, let's go to the action editor first. So this is basically the visual workflow editor, how we build logic in the client application. So you can write code if you choose to, or you can just create your logic using flowcharts like this. So I can make network calls, I can map the data, I can do success and failure callbacks, I can add code snippets, I can show alerts, I can go to different form. Pretty much all the logic that you want to do can be done with just this. So here what we are trying to show is, earlier we showed the diagram view, which the app developer used to create the logic. But internally, we are generating code for each of this, and this one is showing the code that is generated, which also shows the power of the platform, as well as if somebody wants to, troubleshoot or use this as a reference for some code module that they're writing, they can use this and understand how this works as well, right? So this is showing the marketplace. So marketplace is the place where we have all these accelerators. So if you want to build a app that is doing augmented reality, or I want to do a simple carousel view, all these kinds of apps, or I want to integrate with some backend, there are hundreds of applications that are here. So this is showing a simple augmented reality application that is there. I can just click a button and import that to Workspace. I can preview it always without even downloading the code from the marketplace. So If I want to build something, it helps me accelerate the application development. So this is showing the widget library. I can drag and drop simple widgets like a button or complicated things like a template or charts and stuff like that, and then hook up the data to connect them, right? So this is showing some of the templates and such out of the box. So if I want to build an event detail, I just drag and drop that. It comes with the entire page, basically the image at the top with the carousel, the event data, the map that it is connecting to, and description and such. So there is also concept of component within VoltMX, which promotes reusability by ensuring application developers develop in terms of components and build and reuse the maximum extent. There is also training tutorials built in into the IDE itself called as hikes. So you can just click a button and this will walk you through the process of how you build an application, and it will be step-by-step instructions. It will say, hey, click here, put this thing here, write this piece of code there, and it will walk you through this process. So learning the platform also is built in into the platform itself. So that was a quick overview of Iris, which is our IDE. Now let's look at app preview. So this is also a unique capability of VoltMX in the sense that when you are building an application without building the final binary with the iOS certificate and Android's full this thing, you can just download an app preview app of VoltMX from the Play Store or App Store and connect your device either via Wi-Fi or via USB cable or via publishing to our cloud, and you get a code. So what this allows is any developer can test, share the prototype with the designers, share the thing with the business users, see the complete functionality, and it even lets them provide feedback. So if you a designer created something and your designer was given this, and they looked at it and said, hey, the plot looks good, probably you need to change the image size or stuff. That feedback that they gave in the app directly is visible to the app developer in the IDE. So collaboration is a breeze with this software. And it also accesses marketplace that I showed you earlier. So I want to preview something like say a carousel view and see how the carousel view will look in this without even having that app code or the code for that. I can just preview it directly from here. So the preview option is going to make it very easy for you to see what is there and decide what you want to import to your project and get accelerated. So this is showing that marketplace as well as app preview. Now, security is a big demand and something that is a very strong suite of VoltMX. So VoltMX gives one of the best security out of the box. So with just a checkbox while building the application called as protected mode, the app binary is built in such a way that the code is obfuscated. It has root detection and swizzling detection built in. It will make it much more tamper resistant and self-defending. So basically it hardens the binary itself against exploits and attacks. And now let's move on to Bolt Foundry. Foundry is basically the data integration, authentication, analytics layer, right? So Foundry has a very rich set of capabilities. We'll go through a demo of that as well, from authentication, integration, and workflow. And it also has an API management layer. So if you're building APIs and want to expose it to your partners or other teams to consume, they can just use the API management layer to consume it. The APIs will be protected by app key, app secret. So basically, you can use it as a web portal, so to speak, as well, right? So another capability of Foundry is data integration, and the data integration, we try to treat it in terms of object models so that the data, actual backend data, is abstracted and you're only providing the client application a model of the data. So my data itself might be coming from some database, from some API, or from Salesforce or something, some backend SAP, or it might be a combination of all of that. Instead of having the client app be built and know the nuances of all of this, you create an object data model on the server on Foundry, have that connect to whatever backend, and the client application is only interacting with this data model. So what it helps with this, tomorrow I can change it. from one backend to another. I can have a mock service because that service might not be ready, and I might change it to the actual service later. The client application does not even need to change or even be aware because you're managing this with the data abstraction on the backend. Orchestration is again something we'll walk through in the demo. It lets you daisy chain multiple services. Typically, when I'm logging in, I probably have to connect to 2 or 3 backends to get all the data and what I need to show on the first screen. Instead of having the client application go and make those 3 calls, instead you make one call and have Foundry go and make all the calls and get the data back. This is because server to server communication is always way faster than client to server, and it takes this again the complexity away from the client application and ensures that the app is only focusing on what it needs to do and provide as much abstraction as possible to make it smooth, right? um, this is a very busy slide, but this is to show you the amount of functionality that Foundry provides as part of VoltMX. We talked about user identity, data transformation. It also has an offline capability for running the apps completely offline if the device is in a low network or no network kind of scenario. Um, we talked about object services, which is the app data model and abstraction. API management is where you can expose the data as a dev portal, give app key secret for partners and other teams to consume. Everything is versioned. It also has SDKs. If you want to build apps with Iris, awesome. If you want to build it natively using other tool, but use Volt Foundry for your middleware, you can do that as well. It can connect to pretty much any backend. We have like literally 400 plus adapters out of the box and marketplace included. It has data analytics and ability to create custom reports for the data that we capture. You also can send custom data from the application as well. It can track entire user journey and help you with application performance management. Uh, it has build automation, test automation, advanced logging, auditing. It has also monitoring capability out of the box. So if a service is getting degraded, it can throw warnings and can even send emails saying, "Alert! This is something that you need to look into." That alert can be based on performance degradation or errors that are happening and such. It can also look into your CPU, thread usage, memory usage, and those kind of things. And it supports single sign-on across different applications. It supports audit logs, and it supports operational console. So a ton of functionality built into Foundry, and this can run on our public SaaS cloud. It can run on any customer's private cloud. It is a J2E based application. We have Kubernetes based deployments as well as installers for different web servers like Tomcat and JBoss and WebLogic and WebSphere and such. Now let's look at a quick video demo of the functionality. So this is logging into Foundry, and once you log in, you can see all the different apps that have been built on the Foundry side. I can go to a particular app and show some functionality. Um, so we have identity integration and a different type of services. So let's look at identity. Identity is for authentication. So I can choose identity and connect to any backend that is there, or I can create my own custom if I want to. It supports all the OAuth and SAML and protocols, commonly used protocols, as well as the social identity. If I want to have a Google or a Instagram login or stuff like that, that is also something that we can easily create. And you can connect to any backend using integration services from um, databases to API endpoints. So you can just import a Swagger and it will create the entire definition and create the services for you. So these are the out of the box what to say data adapters, but as I said, marketplace has hundreds more that we extend so that we can pretty much connect to anything, and we always have an option for creating custom code if there is a particular scenario that is proprietary technology or something specific and you want to connect, we can do that too. Okay. And here we are showing a simple operation for getting news and such. So you can create a service just with put the endpoints that it needs, what is the operation type, you can pass input parameters to it and get output. Now let's look at orchestration. Orchestration is basically combining multiple services to one. So we have a weather service and we have a news service, so we can combine both of them into one, and I can call them it sequentially, or concurrently depending on the dependencies that they have. So this is one place that I wanted to just pause and explain. So basically, any API that is invoked from Foundry could be accessed or made available to everybody. Of course, somebody is not going to use this for production, maybe just for a demo or testing they might. They can make it available only for anonymous users. That is basically they know it is coming from app A because they got the app key secret, but they do not know if user A logged in or user B logged in, but they still know it came from app A. So that is like an anonymous user. Then you have something called as authenticated user. So it knows that, okay, the authentication for this app is whatever Microsoft Active Directory, and I know that the person logged in is user A and that the person has access. So I can give authenticated app user access to. Or there is another level called as private. This API is not meant to be used by an end user. It is meant to be only used by another service that is there in my server, another service in Foundry. So I can make a private server to server kind of an API too. So all these kind of API, what to say, authentication levels are available out of the box, and you can choose what level of authentication makes sense for you. The orchestration also can be used for looping. So for example, if I have a backend which can only return 10 records at a time, but I want 100 records, I can make 10 loop of the same thing by increasing the index and get all the data aggregated and then make it to us one call. Okay. So now let's move on and look at object services. Object services is the data abstraction that I spoke about earlier, where you create your client object model and you can connect and get the data. Okay, so here we are showing the app data model and what it actually connects to in the backend. It can come from one endpoint, multiple endpoints. It can come from one table in a database, so to speak, or from multiple tables, but you are doing the mapping and saying what is the mapping and what is the, if you want to put some logic between the mapping as well, you can do that. Okay. So if you're connecting to a simple uh, uh, database, you'll have the appropriate endpoints. You'll just need to fill that in and you'll be able to test your connection and then create that particular thing. Workflow is for long running business processes. So basically, the things that we saw earlier are transactional. I want to log in, I make a call, I get a data, and I'm done. I want to get data from the backend, I make a network call, I get the data, I'm done. But you have several scenarios where you want to have a process. It is not going to be done with one call. I want to get a loan, or I want to apply or for some procurement. I want to get a mouse. I need to make a request. That data has to go to somebody. Somebody has to look into it, approve it, and then it has to go to the procurement and it has to get. So that whole thing can needs has different people acting on it, different APIs being called, and it can take a lot of time. It can take a day, it can take an hour, or it can take a month. So we need support for those long running processes for business workflows, and that is where we built this workflow capability where it can hit multiple APIs and get the data, and it can be triggered by events. It can be triggered by object state change. I could have a report for a loan, so just creating the object will trigger it, and then when there is a state change, when it goes from new to approved, it will trigger and it can move to the next stage of the workflow and such. So you have a lot of flexibility on how you create workflows and such. Business rule is another capability where you can write simple logic without actually knowing a programming language. So basically you can write an English-like syntax to create logic. So if I want to create a simple, approval for credit rating, grading, whatever, greater than 600, 600 to 700, go to a manager, below 600, reject, greater than 700, auto approve. So I can just write it like simple, this thing, English-like syntax, and get that working. So another way for business users and stuff to create logic on the test as well. And you can test any functionality that you do right from the IDE. You do not need to go to any application. I can test it. It gets the data from it. I can go and change the payload that I'm sending and test it again, and it will get the data. And you can see the payload and what is the request and response and output. So the request that was sent, the backend request, what is the response, how much time it took. Every data is available right from the Foundry console itself. So for somebody to test. The developer portal is showing the, as I said, the APIs to be exposed for other people to consume, like your partner or some other department in the team where you want to make this API available so that they're consuming it, but they're not coming and modifying the application or APIs that you have created, then you can expose it to them as part of this API portal, and you can test all the verbs and stuff. This also is like an extension. You can test your APIs, modify the parameters, and test right from here. So this is about API portal. And then engagement services is another capability of Foundry, which lets you run campaign and engage with your customers. So it is for sending push notifications and rich push notifications, email, SMS, and such. So I might be running a campaign where when I'm within a certain radius, I want to send some promotion. I can do that. All those can be done with engagement server. And this is showing the analytics capabilities out of the box. You have several reports, custom reports to build reports, build reports with the data that we gather as well. And this is just showing Foundry capabilities in a nutshell. Okay. Now let's look at some of the cool new features that we have added. IQ. So everybody is now talking about AI and AI assisted development. So VoltIQ is basically our AI assisted chatbot that is within the IDE itself. And it can do a lot of cool things currently. It can answer questions. It can provide you design suggestions based on what you're trying to do. It can look at your code and suggest optimizations. It can say, hey, this code module is not used. You should probably remove it. You can translate an application, and you can also do mundane things like building and publishing apps. Let us look at a quick preview of some of this. Okay, so here we are talking about UI design suggestions. I can turn on design suggestions. It will not, I mean, you can choose to turn on and off what features you want. And then I can try to build an app. I try to put two boxes and a button, and then it is like, oh, do you want me to suggest something for you? And if you say yes, it will go look at all the modules that are there and say, hey, this probably will be a good fit for you. Do you want to look at this component? And if you look at it and say, okay, this looks nice, I can just drag and drop it. It will put all the dependencies and you can get that application done. It can build it for, it can look at the library of components that you have locally. It can look at all the components in marketplace and provide suggestions so that it is easier for you to build these things. Okay. Then IQ can also internationalize applications. So I built an application for English first, and then I say, hey, go and enable internationalization, right? And it will automatically enable, it will get all the visible text in the application. Right now, you see there is only the default, and you can say, hey, translate this to German. It gets all the visible text in the application. It goes, translates it, gets that data back and puts it back. And in a matter of few seconds, your entire project is converted to whatever language you want. So the earlier language is still being supported, but in addition to that, it has now supported, German, for example, here. And at the same time, I can translate it to any I-18N supported language. I can make it Japanese, and all with the click of a button, everything is done. So of course, we use translation, so that might not be perfect because we're using automation for that. So if somebody wants to go and look at the actual text that was generated and hand edit it or get it through some compliance team to translate, they can go and modify that we have created as well. So you have that result from that also available for you to improve upon. Okay, then let's look at how the app, for example, what a developer usually has to do a lot of common things, right? I mean, building applications, previewing it, running test automation and such. So instead of them going and clicking each and everything, they can say, hey, just create a new project and IQ will create it for you. You can send, say, what type of stuff you want in that, and it can go and create, right? So it is basically acting as your assistant and acting on the instructions that is given by the developer. So you can create a form, you can create a project and stuff, and you can even build an application for preview and preview it. So this is giving a preview of VoltIQ. So that is a developer assistance. What about the end user that is using the application? So it is easy to add AI functionality for the end users as well, because Foundry is a completely REST API based backend, and it is a very powerful middleware. It can connect to any backend. Your actual AI training for the bots and for the data is going to be done on some platform like Google or Amazon or Microsoft and stuff, which where you have trained the model. And from old Iris, you're building components which is connecting via Foundry and getting the data. Now let's look at a simple application for checking, for analyzing photos and deciding, for whether this is something that can be qualified for a passport, for example, a simple user onboarding case. So this is an application built with VoltIQ, and we are trying to show you how it was built and how it is achieving that. So as part of it, I'm doing some renewal process. I have a place where I have to upload a photograph. So when I upload a photograph that is there, and it analyzes the photo and says, okay, the mouth is open. So basically this is not pass. So you have to upload another photo. So it analyzed and rejected it using AI in the backend. And then you can upload another photograph and then it will analyze it and say, okay, this passed, right? So this is a simple application of AI for applications built. So how did we go about doing this actual thing, right? So there is a third-party API that we used for this particular demo, which does this, and we are using and connecting to it via its REST API. And this is basically the API that it had, which had these standards, and you can test these APIs, right, for the quality check and such. And then we take this API, go to Foundry, and then we configure this operation and service to do this check. And you just pass the API and whatever input parameters it needs, right? And then you can test it, pass the base64 value for you to test it right from the console if you want, and get the output, right? And the response output, it has several outputs. You want to see, look at what you are interested in and only take those parameters. And you can save and fetch the response right here, like I showed you earlier. This is the actual payload for this backend, and you see all the data results that is coming, and you can look and analyze it. Now I can take this to my Iris application and connect that backend, that API that I built, and then map the fields, and it'll automatically do this. And all this has been done without writing a single line of code, right? So this is the backend endpoints that it is coming, and I'm getting the field and looking at what I want and map it to the fields and get that. Okay, so this is showing a practical application of a simple AI use case in VoltIQ. Now let's move on to some other functionality that makes VoltIQ very productive for the developer. So take an application that most of us are familiar with, like an airline application. You have different modules. You have an application, flight booking, you have a seat choosing, you have a check-in where you get a QR code and you want to see a flight status. They're all different functionality. Typically what is done is all this is built as one single application. So if you're changing one module, you're still testing everything because it is one single application. So what VoltIQ came up with is the concept of a micro and a super app. So basically every module, the seat check-in and stuff that we spoke about, can be built as a micro app. So what this means is I can have smaller teams work parallelly on the functionality and build that application. And if I want to add a new functionality tomorrow, I want to do a promotion or a loyalty program, I can just drop that in as a new micro app and release that functionality. If I have a problem with the seat check-in module and I have to upgrade that, I only have to test that module and target upgrade for a specific micro app so as to simplify the application maintenance, right? So overall, it makes it a lot easier and faster to maintain and manage the applications with even smaller teams. So for the particular use case we spoke about, flight, so you can build the booking of flight itself as one of a micro apps in Iris. The flight check-in can be another micro app. You can have common code and your themes as to how the overall look and feel should have. Those can be common apps that are used by all the micro apps. And in your backend as well, it need not be one, it can be multiple depending on what you're doing. You can have a Foundry app for flight and another one for this, but these modules do not need. So I can build them all modular and then create my overall super app when I'm deploying to the end user. As far as the end user is concerned, it is one app, but the application development and process has been simplified because of all this micro and super app technology. VoltIQ also is pretty much the only platform, low code platform, which also lets you build applications for Windows and Mac OS. So you can build an exe file or a DMG file and build an application. It works with full offline capability as well. Now let's look at the test automation in DevOps portion of VoltMX. So because you're building a lot of applications, there is a lot of things to test, and you do not probably want to ideally sit and write code for each of this. So what Iris has is the ability to generate test cases um, by just one time user clicking through, and it will record it and generate a test case out of it and let you create a test suite and combine it with CI/CD so that every time you're doing a code check-in, you can do the sanity of everything that you have built. Let me show a quick demo of this. So this is a test recorder capability from within Iris. I am enabled it, and then I'm just going and testing my app on the right, as you can see, as I would do usually. And the code keeps getting generated here. I can go and tweak the generated code if I want specific values to be done, right? And then I continue testing the app once and everything gets generated. So I create my entire test case without writing any code. And once I've gone through the use case that I want for the app, I can then stop the recording, and then I can go and save this particular use case as a test case. And I can add multiple of these test cases and create a test suite from them. I can just click record now, or I'm sorry, play now, and it will run the actual test case on a device or simulator that you've connected and generated. So you can combine multiple test cases into a test suite and ensure that that is connected with the CI/CD, so that every time that runs, it runs the test cases. It tells you what all ran, how long it took, where it succeeded, and if it failed, it will even show you the exact place where it failed. So this is showing the running of the test case, and this is a dashboard. So if you have multiple test cases, the dashboard helps you quickly identify what passed, what failed, so that draws your attention to where you want to go. And then you can click the item that, for example, succeeded, and say, okay, this thing's passed. This is how long it took. And then I can go to the failure scenario and then look at where it failed as well. So this is showing the exact stack trace. This is where it failed. So it makes it very easy for you to troubleshoot and identify issues as well. So this is about the test recording and test automation capabilities of VoltMX. Engagement, we spoke about briefly earlier. This is basically the ability to send push notifications. This can also be based on geolocation. So you can create geo boundaries, and when you are in a geo boundary, trigger something. You can even create campaigns. So if you want to look at some demographics or some criteria or some buying pattern, and based on that send some promotion, or if somebody is about, their subscription is about to expire, you want to send that. Based on any criteria, you can create a segment and send push notification, and you can program all of this as well. So this is VoltMX engagement, which is for driving all these push notifications and campaigns and such. So in the interest of time, I'm gonna try and go a bit faster through this one. Foundry business process workflow. So we talked about this earlier, where we showed, the workflow is for long running business processes. This is a BPMN 2.0 compliant capability, and it can be triggered by an object state change. We spoke about that. It can be triggered by events, and the events could be from within Foundry, or it can also listen to events from Kafka or some other third-party event stream. It can also be triggered as an API. So I can use the whole workflow as a very complicated, complex orchestration service, and I can just invoke it as an API and run the whole process. It supports both synchronous and asynchronous responses, and it can also support parallel gateway if you want to do multiple processes in parallel as well. So let us look at a more, the example of, I think this one is looking at the loan kind of a scenario. So somebody makes a call to a loan service. It makes a service call to, a backend, like a checking credit score, and it has some parameters. It passes some SSN and amount and stuff like that, and it makes the data, make the network call, gets the data, analyzes it, and then it can determine whether it should, send it for further processing or what should be the output. So basically, based on the output, it can fork and send it on different parts of the workflow. Okay. And so you can configure each of this on what basis you're going to do the forking, what path it has to take, what parameters it has to look, what is the validation criteria, right? So all this can be configured in the workflow itself, right? And based on the eligibility, you can even create an email template and say, this is the template that you're going to send if somebody is approved, or this is the template for somebody getting rejected. And that also can be configured from right within the IDE. I'm sorry, right within the Foundry instance. Okay, so far we looked at a lot of functionality. Application developers build dozens of applications with it. How am I going to manage all this? How am I going to do my DevOps, CI/CD, build automation, and stuff like that? So VoltMX also has something called as App Factory, which is a DevOps and test automation capability built in. So it can be configured. It is built on top of Jenkins. You can configure it such that anytime somebody checks in code into their repository, or you can trigger it, on a time, basically, like, or at midnight every day, run a build. It can run the build, and for all the platforms that VoltMX supports, like Android, iOS, Windows, web, it can build the executables in parallel. Once it is built, it can send an email to the certain users with the build results saying everything, what was it successful, how long it took, logs and such. And it can deploy that to your testing environments, the clients and services to the test environment. It can do a test automation as well. Basically, it can hook up with the device farm and run test automation there. And once the testing is complete, it can generate the results and send it as well, like a dashboard to the user, right? And post the test completion, and if it is successful, it can send it to your targeted environment, like a QA or prod, whatever. Right? So this is showing VoltMX DevOps capability. Now, this is if you are using App Factory. Now, if you have your own CI/CD pipeline, we also have a command line interface for VoltMX, which you can hook in with your endpoint, with your CI/CD pipeline, so that it can work with that for doing all the build automation. So we looked at VoltMX, and we looked at a lot of capabilities of VoltMX. So this is calling out like the um, unique differentiators of VoltMX and why VoltMX. So VoltMX gives you excellent professional developer experience. It is pretty much the only WYSIWYG development tool. So every iteration is fast. You get real-time preview all the time. Testing, debugging, and everything is easy. You have one platform for professional and citizen development. We saw Leap also earlier, where you can build simpler apps, and everything connects via Foundry. So you get IT governance with a secure, citizen development tool. It has very simple and predictable pricing. It is no hidden costs if you're adding more developers or building more apps or using more services. Um, you can add and use as many as needed. It has the strongest security out of the box. So all the capability that we spoke about earlier, white box cryptography, code obfuscation, jailbreak, everything is available at no extra cost by just clicking a button while building the application. And it is also available for with SaaS as well as Kubernetes deployments. And we looked at Foundry, which is basically our middleware, which gives you all those connectors and application development capabilities and can support very complex business logic with full monitoring and authentication and such built in. So that is about VoltMX. And now we can open it up to QA. Any questions?
Hi, everyone. And so we can put the questions in the chat if you have some, and we'll answer them. Otherwise, Suhas may have a couple more words before we end. Suhas, I don't see any chat questions today.
Okay. So All right. Then I think I can go through some of the bits that I sped through. So one other area that we did briefly talk about while building applications is with Voltamex, there are multiple ways of building an application. The recommended way is using reusable code structures called as components. So components is a capability of Voltamex as is. You can build components with contract. You can build it with UI logic and backend. You can say that these are the input endpoints and this is what has to come out. This is the backend it connects to, and that entire piece. So, for example, a login, every application in an enterprise is going to pretty much use the same login. So instead of building that login 10 times, you can build that login as one component and say that this is the interface for integrating with it, and make that available for all the developers so that everybody is using the same thing. So you can build these kind of components and build your own component library. So in a way, the marketplace, Voltamix marketplace that I showed you earlier was also like a component library, so to speak. It also has sample apps, but a lot of them are components, reusable components. And the methodology that we are trying to say is build apps such that it is easy to add and easy to update. So a component first kind of a mentality helps there significantly.
Okay, I don't see any other Q&As. Um, Thank you, Suhas. I appreciate the time today. Very good presentation. And look forward to in 2 weeks we go down and deep into Foundry, which is what Suhas gave us a review of today. Any other words, Suhas, before we close?
Nope. Thank you for your time. And if there are any questions, please get back to us and we'll be happy. And if we need another webinar on a specific topic, please reach out. Um, I'm happy to help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye now.